American Christian or Christian American. My name is Sean Legacy and I'm your host. If you haven't been here before, I would encourage you at some point to go back and watch the first episode. It lays some groundwork, and I led up to actually about 7 or 8 episodes to get into the problems that are happening in America. But the first episode really lays some groundwork of why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. But you can still learn if you don't want to go back. Today we're talking about, obviously, the Confederate holiday of Confederate Memorial Day. Now, Memorial Day is to honor the soldiers who fought in wars. This is to honor the Confederacy. Interesting. Well, first of all, before we go on and talk about this, let's look at another video I made with an article talking about the Confederate holiday, so we have some more information about it. All right, we're going to look a bit here at the Confederate holiday. Is the Confederate Memorial Day a public holiday? Well, it seems to be in a few states. There are 4 states and a state legal holiday in Florida and North Carolina. Observes Confederate Memorial Day. A range of events are organized around the Confederate Memorial Day. The main library of the University of Georgia marks the occasion by publicly displaying the original Constitution of the Confederate States of America. Let's go down here. We're not going. You can go back and read all this if you like to, but I'm not going to read all of it. But I want to look down here. Different dates have been celebrated. January 19th, Confederate Heroes Day, state holiday in Texas. April 26, 2021, Confederate Memorial Day, state holiday. And Alabama, Confederate Memorial Day, state holiday. Florida, Confederate Memorial Day. So they have it on different dates, but pretty close. April 25th, April 26th. May 10th, Confederate Memorial Day, South Carolina. Texas, Confederate Heroes Day again, January 19th, 2023. If you go down here, all the way down, these are planned to continue on all the way to 2031. In North Carolina, Confederate Memorial Day on May 10th. Confederate Memorial Day on South Carolina. Alabama, Confederate Memorial Day, state holiday. So these are all the different states. You can go down, read down the list. Texas, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas. The same thing goes on and on. So it's these 5 states are the ones involved in celebrating this. Okay? All right, so we're looking here at the Confederate holiday. Let's see, Texas celebrates Confederate Heroes Day, and then there's several states that celebrate Confederate Memorial Day. Several in April and a couple in May. So they're celebrating the Confederacy. What are they celebrating? Pride of the South? Well, that's what a lot of people say today. They don't want to be open about it like they were. They were celebrating the banding together to stand up for their right to own human beings. Standing up for their right to brutalize human beings, to torture, to maim, to dismember, and to kill. And after they lost that right, they continued to terrorize. Not that it was limited to the South. It has happened all over this country. But the strongest part of it has been in the South, is they have continued to lynch people, to torture them, to dismember them, to cut their bodies into pieces, and to take body parts as souvenirs after they were burned. And that comes specifically from one particular lynching, although it's happened many times, that I talked about earlier in my videos. a man who people came from church services all over after church to watch his lynching, bringing their children. Actually, what they were doing was traumatizing their children, scarring them for life, and recreating racism, hatred. That's what they were creating in their children by doing this, which they were sinning against God in many ways, including the violent act, including scarring their children, and not properly taking care of their children, but conditioning them for evil. And even in this article I read talked about Georgia with commemorative church services. So what it's talking about here is exactly what the problem is. The problem is that too many predominantly white churches not only have not resolved the problems of racism, but they are the ones who perpetuated it. The church was the core of racism. The Klan in the early 1920s was highly constituted of evangelical Christians. The majority of them were evangelical Christians, people who claimed to be godly, but they were murderous, vile, evil people who said they followed God when actually they followed the orders of Satan. They were disgusting people. And they were disgusting in many ways because, one, they misrepresent who God is. God is not that. God is a loving God, and God does not like sin. He needs to pull away from sin. That's why he pulls away from us. But his son dying on the cross saves us because it was an act of love. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's what it was, an act of love. Going to church is not about just doing a list of things. It's about building a relationship with God. So when we decide to go away from God and not have that relationship, and whenever you commit murder or hate or anger, you're pushing away from God. Now, I'm not talking about people who they have moments and things. God's grace covers us. But when we set our direction on hatred, we're not with God. You can attend all the church services you want. It means nothing. Now, churches are to the blame of the racism in this country, tied up with greedy and selfish people. Does that mean all churches? No. But I would venture to say that the majority, if not all, predominantly white churches have sands of racism spread throughout their church. Meaning that there's people in there, if not all of them, who have influences, indoctrination, because our country indoctrinates people, and churches have done so as well, to be racist. Now, some churches are just, like I said, evangelicals who are absolutely horrific about it. Others who are trying to do what's right, but they're misguided because they don't examine what they really believe. They don't examine the true facts. Now, are all black churches right? No, they're not. Some of them are mixed up in it too, which is, working against themselves. But we don't have to be like that. No matter what our skin color is, no matter how we look, we don't have to be like that. We can truly follow God. But the fact is that the majority of people who claim to follow God will not. They will use God as an excuse. What are you doing? Because think about it. To celebrate the Confederacy in any form, you're celebrating the notion that it is okay to enslave people, and if not enslave, to segregate, and if not just that, to punish them for breaking segregation, to brutalize them, to keep them uneducated as much as possible, to terrorize their lives, to keep them in underfunded schools, underfunded neighborhoods, to keep great job opportunities away from them. The late Charlie Kirk accused that any time a black person got a job, almost anything, but especially any good paying job, that he took that job from a white person. That's how he said. He also said that we did not, when we passed the civil rights law, it was a mistake because it hurt white people. Well, it didn't hurt white people. In fact, there's still a majority of white people control of everything, the money and everything. I heard a woman speak very much ignorantly that she says, they've got Juneteenth. What do white people have? Everything. People who look like me have everything. We have always had everything in this country. And African Americans are not trying to take everything away. They're just trying to be part of the pie, part of the level playing field. But whenever a white person thinks they're being discriminated against, which is absolutely absurd and ridiculous, because they think of themselves as elevated and above. To come down and to be equal with other people who are not Caucasian, they think that's discrimination. We're not talking about white people being, or Caucasian people being less. We're talking about them being on an even playing field, that it goes upon our own merit. We have to go to a job and we have to work for that job, just like everybody else. We don't get the job just because of the color of our skin. Perhaps our country would do better if we did that. To celebrate something like the Confederacy, to celebrate men as heroes who fought and killed others for their right to be able to abuse and murder other people. Now, as you notice, the South hasn't done well overall. I'm not saying everywhere, but overall, the South has not done so well since after slavery times. Because during slavery, they had all this free labor. And so the South became very wealthy because they didn't have to do any work. Not really, except complain about the heat. Sit on the porch, complain about the heat. I'm not saying they didn't do nothing, but the brute labor was done by other people to whom, if they didn't work, they were whipped and tortured by other people who they wanted more free labor, so they created breeding farms. Breeding farms where men were forced to have relations with as many, up to 5 or 6 women a day. They didn't care if it was their mother or their sister. They were forced to have relations with as many women as possible. And then after that, the South hasn't really gone anywhere. The South has stayed behind. And I attribute that to a couple of things. One, they weren't inventive. They were using other people to be inventive. They didn't have to work hard at doing it. Secondly, they spend more time today and throughout since slavery of worrying about plans of how to keep people down and oppressed than they do about investing in their area. They keep the area down in many ways because they don't want African Americans to have anything. So what are we celebrating here on these days? We're celebrating ungodliness. We're celebrating hatred. We're celebrating greed. We're celebrating a racist mindset. We're celebrating cruelty. We're celebrating the abuse of women, the abuse of men. We're celebrating lynchings. We're celebrating torture. We're celebrating keeping people uneducated. We're celebrating mass incarceration in order to keep people down and they can't vote so that you can keep control of the political spectrum. We are celebrating everything that is inhumane and calling it a celebration. They're going to keep doing it. Why? Because as people say, it's over. It's not over. It has never been over. Yes, a few more people have started to think better and be open and understand things. Some who may not really go gung-ho about talking about things are a little less comfortable with some of the other things. So there has been some improvement, but there are also some people who have Caucasian people who have shifted and they've learned and they know this isn't right. But there is still a hardcore group in this country. The hardest core group that will vote for this stuff no matter what. And then another core group who will vote against themselves sometimes, but then when it comes back and you start touching my Medicaid and that, okay, then they come around. So we still have way too many people in this country who are supporting cruelty, inhumanity, thinking about our wealth and not caring about anybody else. Maybe if somebody gets a little close to us, we care about them, but we don't take time to look out and understand them. To celebrate Confederate Memorial Day or Confederate Heroes Day is nothing more than enforcing a racist nation, enforcing the lies of racism, enforcing everything, the system that has been put up to dehumanize and to degrade people. And if somebody is proud of celebrating Confederate Day, Confederate Heroes Day, it tells you who they are. It's time we start celebrating stuff like Juneteenth, the end of slavery. In fact, when it really is celebrating that 2 years after the end of slavery, there were people in Texas still enslaved, and they didn't know that they were free. And then finally they were freed. So you see, people will turn things, make them sound good in order to perpetuate evil. And that's what this country is doing all the time. This country lies through its teeth all the time. What will you do? Will you be different? Because you don't have to blend in with everybody else. One thing to start with is stop thinking that you are special because of the color of your skin. You are special regardless of the color of your skin. You were created by God. You're a human being, whether you have light skin like me or you have darker skin. Your skin color has nothing to do with the value of yourself as a human being. And when we get over the idea that skin color is what's important, we can actually mature as people. To think that being Caucasian, I don't like using the term white. I'll use it, but it really is a social construct that's made all wrapped up in racism, because we're all one race. So I prefer Caucasian, but I will use them interchangeably at times. But to think that you're better because it is a childlike mind. It is childish, it is immature, and there's a whole lot of people who don't grow up, who never see who we're supposed to be. They get older, and they're still abusing people, still hurting people, but they really haven't matured into who God intends them to be. Until the next time on American Christian or Christian American.